Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have our Halloween episode with the anthology film Tales of Halloween. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jace Anderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror anthology and the upcoming Holiday Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man, winner of the 2018 Best of Austin Award, and nominee in 2019 from the Austin Chronicle, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
Hello, and happy Halloween, everyone.
Hello. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. I just want to say before we get started, I'm so happy to have made it to another Halloween with you guys. I know I sound like death dragged over a carpet because
You don't.
I've gotten a terrible cold just at the same time that winter has come. Winter doesn't give you a cold. That really doesn't happen. Nevertheless, there's snow on the ground.
We're about to have record-breaking lows that are like breaking 102-year record of low temperatures. So it's gonna be a fun week. Lots of snow.
Yeah,
lots of snow.
real.
Lots of cold.
But I just want to apologize if I am sniffling and coughing. I apologize. We didn't want to miss our Halloween episode, so here we are. Okay, Tales of Halloween is a 2015 American horror comedy film anthology consisting of 10 mildly interlocking segments, each revolving around Halloween. It was directed by many directors: Neil Marshall, Darren Lynn Bousman, Axelle Carolyn, Lucky McKee, Andrew Kasch, Paul Solet, John Skipp, Adam Gierasch, Jace Anderson, Mike Mendez, Ryan Schifrin, and Dave Parker. The film had its world premiere on July 24th, 2015 at Fantasia, and it had a release in October 16th, 2015 by Epic Pictures. All right, nobody wants to take responsibility for us choosing this movie. Nevertheless, here's what we're going to do our thoughts. We're going to do a lineup that we have never, ever done because we always put Julia in between. But this time, let's do Drew, Tony, Julia, and then I go. Drew, Tales of Halloween.
So I don't dislike this movie. There are definitely segments of it that I think are really fun, but the segments that I don't like, I really, really don't like, and I'll save that for when
I can't wait to hear
specifically about them. There's one in particular that I actually find highly problematic. I'm a sucker for anything Halloween themed, so like I there's definitely stuff in this movie that I enjoy. I think it's kind of at its best when it's not trying to punch above its like weight class. Like, this movie is when it's like just kind of being a campy, low grade Tales from the Crypt knockoff. It's kind of a fun view. Anytime it tries to be a little bit more artsy than that, that's when it kind of loses its way. I did make the mistake of watching this back to back with Trick or Treat, which we did an episode on way back. And I have to say, as Halloween themed anthologies go, it really does pale in comparison to Trick or Treat, which just smokes this. And I know I shouldn't be drawing that much of a comparison, but it's kind of hard not to.
Well, the whole internet draws that comparison and has said this is as good or better, which I strongly disagree with.
That's madness. Like the worst segment in Trick or Treat is better than this entire movie. But be that as it may, I kind of have a meh kind of feeling to this movie overall. Like, don't love it, don't hate it. I don't know that it'll make it into my regular October rotation again. Like, there's definitely other Halloween-themed movies I probably will rewatch before I rewatch this one.
Thank you very much. That was, and I really can't wait to hear your discussion of which ones you think are going for art and which ones succeed because they're schlockier than that. Tony, what are your opening thoughts?
So I want to like this movie way more than I do, and I very much dislike tearing things down. especially, as a writer, and I know how hard it is to make things. Like getting a movie made, getting a short film made, that's hard. It's not easy. And so when I see something that I don't like or that I dislike or I'm disappointed in, it's not really my thing to want to tear it down. I don't get that satisfaction like, haha, stick it to this. So that being said, I found the movie frustrating because there's a lot of really cool bits, and each one frustrated me in a different way. And I don't know if it's my mindset. Again, you bring into a movie what you bring into it. It's very personal each viewing.
Mhm.
But I wanted to like it a lot more because I think there's some really clever stuff. And I think within most of the segments, other than like one or two, which I just felt I didn't get, it frustrated me. And then I also found it to be, there are so many segments. I saw it as, and again, if there's any of the writers or any of the people who made this film who hear this, I hope they don't have a voodoo doll of us criticizing it. But I felt like it really went for quantity instead of really sticking with only a few of them, which I think would have worked better. I would have liked to have seen some of them fleshed out a little more. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this as much as I had hoped, and I think that's a shame because I think there's some good bits and some cool gore. And it's got a lot of fan service. I didn't like it as much as some of the hype that I saw, and that's a shame. And again, I apologize if you're like, hey, look, let me see what people said about my film. It's not in my nature to tear stuff down. It didn't work as well for me.
All right, I really appreciate that, Julia. Where do you land on this?
Oh gosh, I did not enjoy this film, and I'm not going to be as sweet as Tony. It's not that the film doesn't do what it sets out to do. It just sets out to do things that I don't like. So that's why I don't like it, because I don't, I've said many times, I don't like gore. I don't like super violence. I don't like, I don't know. There was a lot of things I didn't like about it, but there were a couple of things that made me laugh. Hopefully they were intentionally making me laugh. And then there was a couple of things that I thought were creative and interesting, but for the most part, I did not enjoy this film. But again, it's mostly because it is so gory, and I don't like anything that's that gory. So I wasn't going to like it even if it was super brilliant. But I think it'll be interesting to talk about. I definitely agree that 10 stories is too many stories. I mean, I was like, oh my God, how long is this film? And then Jason's like, it's only like an hour and 37 minutes. I'm like, it feels very, very long because they're trying to fit in so many stories. Whereas I think if it had been like half as many, then they could have done more with it. And it wouldn't have felt so like it was just dragging on, but we're not dragging on, but just kind of going on and on and on. So yeah, it'll be interesting to talk about though.
I really appreciate that. Okay, I came to this having no expectations whatsoever. We were casting about for, hey, what is our Halloween film gonna be?
And had Halloween in the title.
We learned that there was an anthology called Tales of Halloween, and so I was like,
I'll own that part. I was the one that said, hey, this is on Shudder. We can do this.
Right. So we chose that film, and I actually found myself enjoying it. I probably enjoyed it more than anybody else here. We have a lot of experience with anthologies, and I am really close to all of those great Amicus anthologies and the Amicus anthology knockoffs that occurred during the Amicus period and around 5 and 6 years after Amicus stopped. So if you want to do a horror anthology, that's sort of where my heart lies. Nevertheless, I found myself enjoying this. There were several stories that are really funny. I think we'll go through each one, but I think a major issue with it is they made a deliberate choice. Just imagine they gathered all their people and they said, each of you make a story. Tell me what your story is going to be, and we'll make sure that none of you are doing exactly the same kind of story. And we're going to have 10, which means that each one is going to be quite short. So it becomes a lot like that Simpsons episode where they do a very brief, like short subject and then move onto another one. And that means that to some extent, the only way you can even hope to do an effective story is if you make it a little funny. So those are some of the challenges. I think we should just kind of go through and start out. I want to mention as we begin, we have, I think, a very effective opening of the film, which is the pop-up book thing where they do the opening
that is
credits.
cool.
That's super
Yeah.
cool.
Plus Adrienne Barbeau.
Yeah.
No, all of that is awesome.
Adrienne Barbeau of Maude and Escape from New York is and Swamp Thing.
Adrienne Barbeau is not just so okay. I thought of Adrienne Barbeau and I went, Snake Plissken. It's Escape from LA, right?
Escape from New York.
Escape from New York and Escape from LA. Is she not in both?
She's not in both.
Oh, she's not in both. Okay, never mind.
She died in a car accident on the bridge. Spoiler for Escape from New York.
Okay, yeah. Well, too late for that. Anyway, so
I think everybody who's watching this podcast or listening to this podcast has probably seen Escape from New York.
Maybe. Anyways, so but obviously I couldn't remember. But the thing is, apparently, according to IMDb, her being in this is actually an homage to her radio host role from The Fog.
Oh,
but
yes, of course.
I thought it was interesting that she's also in Escape from New York, and then there's a kid that's dressed up as Snake Plissken, and then there's the Carpenter bar that they're eating, and so it's like all this John Carpenter bits, but whatever.
She's also the really mean wife in what's it called, Lot 7 or something. Anyway, one of the stories in Creepshow, which is a dangerous comparison to invite when you're making a horror anthology movie. But yes, I mean, she's perfect. She's a perfect choice. She plays the DJ just like in I'm trying to think of another movie that has a DJ going, Do the Right Thing, where her spiel is happening all night long, and that's kind of cool. That actually makes me really settle in to this movie and kind of expect good things. The
other thing that's going on all night long is that they're watching Night of the Living Dead.
Everybody in this little town. We should set up. We're in a cute little town that's big enough to have Adrienne Barbeau, as an all-night radio. So it could be a college town where they have a small FM station, and everybody is watching a few public domain horror movies on their TV set.
Well, everybody's watching Night of the Living Dead, and everybody
Carnival of Souls.
Oh, okay. And everybody has the same trick-or-treaters coming through. So you're seeing these kids that were in various stories show up at people's houses as trick-or-treaters.
Yes. Which is very like trick-or-treat. That's in fact, if this weren't called something different, this could be trick-or-treat too. They are so close together.
You're making this aspire to lofty artistic heights that it just doesn't reach.
Well, most sequels don't. So if it was,
but like Trick or Treat is especially I watched these two back to back, and I swear I don't want to keep making that comparison.
I'm glad you did.
But Trick or Treat is really, really good, and it's beautiful to look at. Like, just a gorgeous movie. Like this doesn't have that going for it.
That's interesting. I have almost no memory of what Trick or Treat looked like, so I appreciate
rewatch it. Get back to me. Trick or Treat
I'm with
gorgeous.
You. But anyway, in structure, they're very, very similar. How minor characters will show up in the and that's the so-called interlocking bit of it that we were talking about. By the way, not important to me at all. I kind of enjoyed the universe of like Creepshow or all of those Amicus ones where the frame story barely held up and certainly did not stand to any scrutiny at all once you got into the stories. And stories had zero connection to one another. I think that's a Tarantinoization of film that wasn't necessary. I think Tarantino's great, but I think ever since he came along with Pulp Fiction, we started, doing these clever tricks of like interlocking all the stories. And I don't know. Or am I the only person?
I like it because I like spotting it. I like that you're like, hey, those are the same kids that just were in that other story that killed those people.
I am unbothered by it. I think it's entirely, it's whatever the filmmaker wants to do. Like there isn't really a right and a wrong way to do it. Like I'm more interested if like the actual guts of the anthology work, which is the individual stories, the framing device. Like Creepshow, of course, does it in the form of a comic book, which might be the most simple and effective way to do it, but it doesn't really matter.
And you remember Darkside? It was the little boy telling the stories to Blondie. That was awesome.
Well, see what I like. So one thing I like about this is that the stories get told and then they come true. It's like what is it that we watched the other day with the toe turning up in the stew or whatever?
Oh yeah, that's
Scary Stories to Tell.
Scary Stories.
Yeah, that one. That's that idea that as you tell the story, suddenly it comes true.
But
I think that's fun.
there isn't that nature of telling a story. In this one, this is just a supernatural universe that we live in.
No, but this is what happens in the first story. The story where the kids are telling the Sweet Tooth story. They start out. They're telling the story, and then it comes true.
Yeah. Okay. And in fact, we should, as much as I'd love to continue to just sort of ponder anthologies, and we might, if anything comes up that you'd like to talk about anthologies along the way, by all means, let's talk about it. But we should go ahead and get into it. The first story is called Sweet Tooth. This kid, Mikey, who is dressed up like Snake Plissken, hears a scary story from his babysitter and her jerk-ass boyfriend.
Douchebag boyfriend.
Yeah, he is.
They call it out.
He's like he's like, I'm sure he's a very sweet person, and I'm sure that maybe he's very nice, and he buys girls Orange Julius's, and his mom loves him. Nevertheless, in this movie, he is a Robert Pattinson lookalike wearing a black bodysuit for no reason that I can ascertain. And he's telling a story of the story of the Sweet Tooth is kid every year. It's a wonderful little folk story.
So yeah,
kid goes trick or treating, comes back, and has to give the candy to his parents who are very strict. Tony, go ahead.
But again, when you say like, oh, there's this cool myth. This is what frustrated me. There's little bits like this,
right,
where you're like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
And they show that he comes in and the parents are enjoying all the candy, what turns him into Sweet Tooth, and there's this rapturous. I mean, they want to make out and everything.
Yeah, they're using it as a sexual thing, right?
Yeah, and he's just so angry, and that's what drives him to become Sweet Tooth and kill him. But as it transforms from that, again, almost every twist was just frustrating.
Yeah, because it has such potential. I'm with you, Tony. It has such potential to be great. Like this idea that this kid is so the kid walks in on his parents. They're eating all this candy, and they're making out. They're turning into this sexual thing, and then he just goes, "Okay, I'm just going to kill them," and he kills them super violently, and then he eats the candy, and then he eats their insides, like their stomachs. And so it's just stupid. I was like, why does it have to become really gross and really unrealistic? I mean, it was perfectly.
I loved that.
Oh, I couldn't stand
that was one of the things I think
so
this
gross,
movie, when it actually is firing all cylinders and does quite well.
Because I was fine with the killing of the parents. It's not the eating of their guts.
This is what pushes it into being EC comic, Tales from the Crypt, over the top. And, I really liked, this is one of the sequences I really thought was effective. And it was very, the whole idea behind it, nicely evocative of Halloween. So it stays on what the anthology is supposed to be about, and I guess they probably put it front and center because of that. But this whole sequence actually and it's creepy actually. There's a few parts where it's actually very creepy, especially like the sort of gnarled hand reaching out for the candy bar.
Sure,
I like that. I like this bit
actually, but yeah.
Well, yeah. No, but then what I was going to say is, then the thing is that they've told the story to the kid about the Sweet Tooth kid who killed his parents and ate all the candy and then went for more candy by going into them and eating them their insides. So then the actual monster now, so for some reason, which that we are never told, that kid became a monster,
became a demon
monster. So we don't know if he became a demon at that point, but for some reason it's an adult demon, or if he lived for a long time and then died and then became. But anyway, for now he's just a demon adult demon or whatever.
And you have to leave. Yeah, you have to leave candy for him.
You have to leave candy for him, which is brilliant.
great.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
then you leave candy for him, and he won't kill you. But then the stupid teenagers, because they don't know this is a real story that they've just told, or that they've made it come true or something. They did not. They ate all the candy, and so they do get killed, and they do get their intestines pulled out through their mouths. It's so gross, and I'm just like, why does it have to be like this? And then, but the kid who took the story very much to heart did leave candy for him, and so he doesn't get killed, and which is fine too. Like that part I like, but I just think the thing with the intestines is so unnecessary, and it takes all the pleasure out of it for me. I'm like, I'm into the
Interesting.
story, and then I'm like, never mind.
Okay, so your big complaint here is that it goes
It's
too far.
gross.
It's too gonzo, too
Yeah.
gross, too gory.
Yep.
Okay, all right, I'll accept that. Because my taste can go either way. I can lean way towards the spooky and sweet, like a TV movie from the '80s where they would never do something quite this grody. And I can kind of go here, but I hear where you're coming from. That makes sense. All right, so the next one up, and we should probably we can even skip ones that we think are not worth discussing. I'll let you go. But the next one up, Night Billy Raised Hell. Barry Bostwick is a demon who every Halloween, one presumes, kidnaps a kid and replaces him with his little demon buddy, and they go
I don't
around.
think he's done it every Halloween. I think, well, maybe, but it didn't seem like
Who
anybody.
knows? Anyway,
Seems
he
like
does
this
it
is the
this
first
time.
time he's done it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, regardless,
I hate the older kids in this. They're such jackasses.
Yeah.
they're not very
again, this
real.
is frustrating because the part where you don't quite know it's going to happen, and then the gleeful insanity of him being a protege to basically the devil. And it's great because he comes to the door and he's like, "Oh, great costume, kid." And then
He's wearing a devil costume.
yeah, he's wearing a devil costume. Takes him under his wing, and they go on this just debauchery.
It's wonderful.
Insanity.
It's really funny.
And so you're watching it, they're like killing people, all kinds of things. And you're like, there's no way this kid has suddenly been converted to this murderous demon just because. And Jason's like, well, maybe because he's the devil, so he has that influence. But no, it turns out that, of course, like you said, that he's replaced the kid with the demon, but he's wearing the same mask and he's the same size as a little person. So he's the same size as the kid. So people think, because they know the costume, that it's the kid doing these things. So he's going to get busted for it later on.
And then he gets busted and like shot. Like to me it's so much more effective if he's just finally like, people make fun of me. Screw this. The devil's taking me under his wing. Yeah. I'm just gonna be this thing. I'm gonna be what people say I am. Fine.
Right.
And to me, that was kind of the dark humor and the magic of it. When it does the twist,
it's a super depressing story where
when it does the twist where it's like, ha ha, it was a demon I took with me.
But now the kid's gonna be in trouble.
And this kid gets blown away with shotguns.
Yeah.
Like,
does he get killed? Do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh gosh, horrible.
Because they make fun of him in the ear, and they
horrible.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. But I love the dark humor part where all of a sudden this kid's a demon. That worked for me hands down. And then the twist was like, oh, okay, sure, whatever.
I guess I drew.
To me, this is also the probably as far as being funny. This one is the one that succeeds the most.
I agree.
It does have funny moments until the end.
It's just so insane. Like watching them hang out, like the devil's taking him under his wing. To me, that conceit is where it works.
Well, the devil has this, like the way he does the devil is this sort of, he looks like a TV horror host and he sounds like Vincent Price, but he acts like this old lecherous guy. And the whole and I actually didn't realize until you said that this was Barry Bostwick. Like he's unrecognizable in this outfit, and he's terrific. Like he's probably the best performance in the whole movie.
I'm with you. Absolutely. I would go so far as to say that hands down.
Yeah.
I agree. But I didn't like the twist because to me it kind of negated just this weird, it became this weird thing.
Yeah. Well, then you feel sorry for the kid because the kid's not a bad kid.
Yeah. And then it becomes something totally different that it didn't need to be that.
Right. Well, I have a couple thoughts about that real quick. One is, I agree that one major problem with this film is that the teenagers in this movie are douchebags in a way that isn't like, I don't understand. Like, I was a teenager, and I have to say, not 100% of teenagers are douchebags. Really, only maybe
We also
like
have 2 teenagers who are not
the one
douchebags.
in this town. All the
in this
ones
town,
in this town are.
apparently in this town, you hit puberty and you become a sadistic little punk. And that's just not the way that teenagers work. I mean, fully 20-30% of them are good kids, and that's
rude.
number one. Number
Very rude.
two, I think you nailed something interesting, because remember, one of the movies we didn't like among the Amicus ones was Tales from the Crypt, which is actually one that I have a fondness for. But one of the difficulties about that one is that it's still extremely nasty against the leads who don't deserve what happens to them. Not necessarily all of them, but some of them. And those stories work best when they deliver a sort of bizarre, made-up puppet justice to people who do bad things. In this movie, shit just happens, and you're unlucky. Halloween night's here, and bad things are going to happen to you, and I guess that's what it is to be a horror movie. But the best
apparently
ones usually
this
have a
town is
moral.
cursed because the sheriff guy says every year everybody in this town goes batshit crazy.
I do like that part when it gets to that, and his, it's a take on the trope, and it's more meta than perhaps it needs to be. But I do enjoy.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I hate Halloween as a cop, because not only is it crazy like it can be, but in this town it's especially crazy. And that part is interesting.
Let's just talk real quick about just the payoff in the next one. Trick, a bunch of blissed out youngish friends are hanging out. They get attacked by a bunch of kids. Very scary section, and it turns out that they are kidnapping psychopaths.
So yeah, that was super weird. That one actually.
This one did not like work for me at all.
This one,
nope.
This one is one of the ones I like. Again, they were trying, I guess, to do something a little loftier. I think it was a mistake to kind of do I guess human trafficking or organ trafficking or whatever they're alluding to that's going on with these friends.
I think they're just psychos. Hard to say. I don't know.
They're just like whatever it is. It does not sync up well with the two stories that precede, which has a sort of EC comic feel to them.
Yeah.
Whereas this seems something. It has a much more modern horror feel. It feels like something more out of like the Saw school of horror. And I just don't like it.
This falls into, and again, I still feel remorse laying into somebody's work. This is, I don't know, maybe that makes me a bad critic. I have no idea. Anyway, there's a thing I dislike. And if you like it, cool. And these people evidently want to make things for people who like this. I dislike this. There's a certain cynicism and the twist is everyone's terrible. And did this shock you? Did this shock you? Did this shock you? Hey, I'm shocking you. Did this shock you? After leaving college, it didn't take me very long to realize, like, I've seen this. Anybody who's watched a ton of horror movies, this isn't shocking for them anymore.
Yeah.
And there, although I know a lot of people who like that, like, haha, I'm also along for the ride. This shocking thing works for me because it is gory and cool. I mean, that's for you, like, more power to you. But for me, when I encounter someone who I can tell is go boogity boogity booty shocking, because we can do it's cost effective to make horror like gore now. It's cheaper. And it's highly effective. Like, the gore is insane. Like, the people did some pretty amazing work with the prosthetics in this. But it doesn't work for me anymore for somebody to be twisting that. I find it eye-rolling myself. And
are you talking about, let me make sure that I'm tracking with you.
Perhaps I need to be, but I've seen so much where people just lean into this idea that they're somehow shocking gorehounds. I don't know, maybe they're not supposed to. It's pretty easy to see terrible gory things, and there's way gorier even in the 70s.
Oh yes,
definitely in the 80s. And I mean, we live in a world where if you want to find it, and I don't recommend it unless, I don't know, like, you can find a copy of Guinea Pig still. You know? So, like, if you're into horror, I don't know, I don't enjoy that anymore. It feels like the adult version of putting your hands in grapes and going, it's eyes. And there comes a time when you're like, yes, it's grapes. Okay, I get it. Boo! This, just like the 10 other Halloweens, now it's grapes. I get it. It's not eyes. And that's how I feel about this kind of stuff.
So let me make sure I'm tracking with you. I don't disagree with anything you said, but I just want to make sure that I'm closing in on the thing that you're most disappointed with. Is it the thing that you're most tired of? Just the twist? Ooh, everybody's evil, or is that it? Like
Both.
you're
It's
saying
both.
that's.
Like, oh, okay, yeah, they're evil, but also look how gory.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. I feel the same way, honestly,
not.
about there's no nudity in this movie, by the way. Did you notice that? But I mean, like, a lot of times you watch something like Westworld and you're like, oh my God, come on, you're just being gratuitous now because you figure we paid our money for HBO, and so now we gotta feel like we're getting our money's worth. It's that kind of gore here, where it's like, hey, you guys expect some gore, right? So here's
And the gore
know.
is, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'll fully admit, because again, it's hard to make this kind of stuff. I may not be the person. There's a subset of people, and I know because I like going to Fantastic Fest. I've seen a couple things where I felt kind of similarly. And I have other friends who are really taken with the movie, and that the way that plays out is their jam.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing that maybe that's just no longer my jam. Even though I can appreciate a ton of gore, effective gore, and actually appreciate what it takes to make all of that. And I'm not against being a gore hound. I mean, I'm a horror fan through and through. But there's a certain twist where it feels like it still feels like somebody really trying. There's an Onion article from years ago where it says Marilyn Manson going door to door trying to shock people. And that always plays in my mind when I see something where I feel like it's almost like I'm being talked down to be honest. Did it shock you? Not really. Yeah.
But here's my question though. Okay, so aside from the gory part, did you think that it was creative, or did you think it's been done a million times? I thought it was kind of creative. The idea that the kids are not the bad guys. The kids are getting their revenge on these bad guy teenagers. I actually thought that was pretty clever.
It was interesting, but the way it's told,
yeah.
I guess
that's what I'm saying.
I've
There's
seen
so many
something
things
similar.
about this film. There's so many things about this film where I feel like the potential is there, and then they just don't take it as far as they could have, or they don't take it the way they would have gone.
Well, it's also the way it's told by the end. And it is actually interesting where they're deleting. She's trying to get rid of her history on her phone. Like, I hope they don't catch me with these pictures.
Right.
And so there's, again, I think that's what's so frustrating to me and why I have such a reaction is even among that. So the twist where it does turn into that, it feels very quick because we've got 10 of these we have to do.
Yeah. So and that's when it begins to get really exhausting.
Quick, and then and that's where I feel like it goes, haha, I've shocked you, correct?
Yeah,
like they were the bad guys all along,
right.
And the kids are great. But there's bits, again, where she's hiding and deleting the phone stuff and how that all plays out. That is actually cool.
Yeah, but it's so rushed that you're even confused about what you're seeing. You're like, wait, what?
Absolutely.
What? So I really feel like this would have been a story that would have benefited from a few extra minutes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, again, these earlier movies that we saw would typically have 4, maybe 5 stories rather than 10. And because the other problem, even though all these stories are shorter, it still runs the risk of making you feel exhausted and like you've seen enough, the movie's gone on long enough, even though it's just the same length as a typical story, like Tales from the Dark Side or whatever.
Yeah, but you don't get, like you say, you don't get so many stories usually.
So the next one was The Weak and the Wicked. This is the one about this like psychotic group of teenagers who once were a psychotic gang of kids. It's it's fine. I mean,
I like the idea of, again, each one. Why I can't. I'm sorry, I keep repeating myself.
I feel like
it's so frustrating that there's neat stuff. The kid dressing up as the demon and that kind of all that awkwardness and the way why he does this again is cool, but the twists and how it all plays out just didn't work as well for me.
Yeah.
I feel like,
but I like the
one,
demon, and I like the kid who's dressed as the demon.
I feel like this one did not have enough to do with Halloween. They did this whole spaghetti western homage, and it kind of, I don't know. Again, it just doesn't really sync up very well.
That's kind of goofy, isn't
well,
it?
it only had to do with Halloween
that.
because that's what the anniversary of. So these 3 kids, when they were kids, and they're all dressed up in their Halloween costumes, kill this guy's parents for no reason. They set the RV on fire, and so now it's the anniversary of that. Like many years later on Halloween, that's the only thing that has to do with Halloween. And so he's gonna call this. It was very much of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer type of thing. But he's gonna call this demon to come and kill them, or get revenge.
But I like that the way he's discovered it almost feels like the back of a comic book kind of ad.
Yes.
Let's put together this costume and summon it up. And
exactly.
that reveal is like funny. And when he comes out, he's gonna be a badass, and they're like, "Wait, you're not a badass. Wait, you're that kid. Get him."
Yeah.
And there is that. Again, if you'd had that be longer, we could have kind of gotten more into it. But as it stands, it sits right in the middle and isn't as effective either way. And they play it off. Adrian Barbeau says, "Oh, this is for you street urchins," but there's a section the other street urchins are terrible. The punks.
Well, the other thing I can't figure out is, and Amicus would never have done this, right? Is there, or if you think of Tales from the Dark Side, it has elements of camp, but never something that you're invited to laugh at that you're not going to laugh at. And like the business with the spaghetti western music that's playing, the rip-off Ennio Morricone music, you might recognize that and go, I get it, it's spaghetti western, but it's not funny, and so therefore it's just distracting. It's just this annoying annoying business.
The funny parts are the part where they realize he's really not a demon.
That is
oh crap.
That's a good moment. That is
they play it out, and then the dark humor of when the demon actually does his business, and you see the demon. I thought that, and that costume looked really, really good too.
Yeah. But by the way, like at this point, as we go through it, what is this? That's story number 1, 2, 3, and there's 10 stories. Now remember, in Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, both of those movies had like 4, maybe 5 stories tops. I think that Creepshow had like 3. Honestly, Creepshow. Let's take a look, shall we? Here's Creepshow. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Yeah. So we should probably pick up our discussion speed then.
Yes. Graham Grinning Ghost was next. That's the only interesting thing there was that you had cameo appearances from people at the party, but really there wasn't anything to this story. This was written and directed by Axelle Carolyn, who maybe is an amazing creative. But the story here, the girl leaves her mom's Halloween party. She gets chased. She winds up, the demon character follows her home.
It's a Bloody Mary kind of story.
Right.
And then there's the same. It's
got no payoff. It really feels like it's not even there.
Yeah, she just turns around and the demon's there on the couch with her, and that's it.
Yeah, the director should have gone, in retrospect, this story is not working. I'm just going to cut it. Right. Honestly, seriously, it should have been just cut. Because
although there is one good thing about this one, I liked a lot the really cool ambient fog thing that's like where the demon's kind of appearing out of the fog behind her. That was pretty neat visual effect.
It's really, again, this works pretty well. I like the suspense of her car breaking down. It has all the bits, but you've seen this kind of a bunch.
Yeah,
it's nothing I haven't seen before, and that's okay. Not everything has to be brand new, but it's frustrating. Again, like, okay, well that happened, and I guess on to the next one.
Okay, the next one is by Lucky McKee, and it was called Ding Dong. And I actually, you guys might not have dug this one. It's a complete change of tone.
I want to punch this one.
Yeah, and I like Lucky McKee. I think Lucky McKee is very
a misogynistic piece of crap. I don't even understand how in When was this movie made?
2015.
Yeah, how was a movie where a woman, because she is unable to have a kid, or I guess her husband is, withholding information on why they're not having a kid, and therefore she becomes psychotic and abusive because of that. How is that made, in this era?
It's the other way around.
Stuff about the abusive relationship and everything.
So unbelievably sexist.
It's the other way around, though. She is a witch first, and then that's why he decides she shouldn't have children.
I'm saying that there is the underlying thing here, though, is really problematic.
Yeah,
so, I just.
What's
really?
I felt like it was a good look at an abusive relationship. I enjoyed all that stuff. What I felt was that it got wrong is that, again, in stories like this, the payoff is supposed to be that the malefactor gets thrown in the oven, not the victim. Not the victim. So that was super weird.
It was a good story.
I love the just whack ass presentation of this.
I didn't care for it. I just liked that the kids were the same kids.
Sorry.
Sorry, Tony.
No, I just felt like it was super disjointed. And again, frustrating. I like Lucky McKee. Jason, I think you were at Banamathon. We saw May, which is a fairly feminist take, if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since I've seen it. He also did Sick Girl. Lucky McKee is really talented. And once I found out he was the person who made this one, just so disappointed because I actually like his work. And I really it felt weird and it felt to me very disjointed.
Visually,
I like that. I like him as a director and as a writer, and that really just made me sad when I realized how much I did not like this one.
Visually, this does have some interesting stuff about it. I'm not saying that this director is talentless. I doubt, based off of May, I really doubt the intention was to do something that's quite as misogynistic as this is, but that's how it comes off. And sometimes author's intent isn't the same as what ends up on the. And look, I could be an asshole. Somebody could look at this and go, "No, Drew, you're wrong. This is actually quite feminist. You're being a dunderheaded liberal man. You don't know what you're talking about." But I've seen this movie twice, and both times when I watched it, I was just really off-put by this story. And maybe if they had, like you're talking about, maybe if they had a little bit more time to develop what this woman, because you have the surface aspect of it that she's a witch and whatever, but they didn't have enough time to kind of develop the underlying idea here. It
was just too weird. I didn't care for it. I didn't find it particularly misogynistic, but I definitely found it too weird, and I didn't enjoy it. So what's the next one?
Okay, the next one is This Means War, where you have an old school, Professor Griffin style Halloween fan who is set up across the street from new school aggro Halloween fans, and they're at war based on how loud their music is and so forth.
Well, they're the typical derpity-dur metal.
So what did you think? What do we think?
I don't know. It just is what it is. They fight, and then the metalheads are rock and roll, metalheads, whatever. It just. I don't know. I mean, it's darkly humorous. It's kind of funny when they're duking it out, and it says a lot about all the people who are filming instead of trying to help. There's stuff there. Again, it's not bad. It just kind of goes, and then things happen. And I do like the conceit of the new school, old school thing, especially after we talked about haunters. It kind of plays into that. That's interesting, but by the end, it's Looney Tunes kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's true. It is
fine. It didn't leave a huge impression either way for me. But it's the parts that are darkly humorous are pretty funny, and the gags are pretty good. It does. I think it does exactly what it's supposed to do.
I feel like this is
in the mix of 9 other things.
Yeah. Well, but Tony, would you put this towards the upper half of the 10 or lower half?
I mean, it's upper, but it's still in the middle. If you just had this maybe slightly longer, or as an interstitial, like if you had one that was shorter that had only like 3 or 4 things, you could spread this fight, and you would catch them as they went through the city, through the town, and you would see this fight happen periodically. That could be kind of funny.
That
as
is
it
funny
stands, it's one section that kind of potentially gets lost in a bunch of others, because it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it does that pretty decently, which is weird to say. That's not a knock, and I hate if it sounds like a knock. It's not. It's because there's so many, it's easy for this one to get lost. If that makes sense.
No, I agree. I like this one for, I've never seen anybody actually attempt to think about this thing of like old school yard art and skeletons and stuff like that versus the new school of like a lot of like, Vaseline and stuff and glycerin and guts everywhere and brains and so forth. And I haven't heard anybody comment on that. That struck me as kind of new.
The metalheads are annoying.
I'm sure. Yes.
I mean,
I'm sure.
But they're supposed to be to play against the traditionalist.
Yes,
and I get that. It's supposed to be.
Everything
none of my criticisms are. None of my
I'm not sure
criticisms
who we're
are like,
supposed to
no,
like.
this makes it terrible.
I'm also not sure who the director is. Who does the director think is right here? I'm completely not clear, because we live in a world in this movie where everyone is a douchebag except for the very young. I completely am not clear on. Are we supposed to agree with the metalheads that the old school dude is pathetic, or what? I have no idea.
I will say that I think it's cool that it can be ambiguous. I think you're supposed to kind of decide, and that's what makes it. That's what makes the over the top Looney Tunes action work.
Your idea is a better one. If they were to keep fighting through the entire film and then maybe band together to do something cool, that actually would be really neat.
I mean, it's not fair to do the whataboutism like, if I was running the zoo, I would do this. But I could see it. Again, it's just because there's so many and one that is effective in many ways and would be effective if it weren't mixed in a sea of things.
Next comes. I apologize for talking.
No, go ahead.
Next comes the one that I believe actually should be last. I don't understand why the last one is last, but the next one is Friday the 31st, and it's the one with the aliens. And I don't know. The reason I say it should come last is because having a spaceship take off at the end just feels like a nice button for this film.
This one was cute. Like I think, and it's sort of turning the table.
You can see Julia not thinking it's cute.
I know. I'm like, okay, I thought the alien was cute, but boy, did I not think that
the whole thing was cute to me. It was funny. Like,
it was funny.
The idea of turning the tables on a Jason type character, and I love like kind of how put upon and clumsy and dopey he is once he becomes the victim. And
this is what I'm saying, Drew. That's what I'm saying is that they could have just done that and then not had the horrible gory like stake through the poor girl running around. I mean,
that's true to what they're lampooning, which are Friday the 13th movies, which are obscenely gory.
Right. And it does do the thing like, haha, let's up the gore and up the gore. I mean, that's the joke, right?
To the point where it's a Monty Python type skit.
It really was. I started saying that it's only a flesh wound.
Yeah, and that's the joke. I do like how frustrated he is that he cannot. He has no desire, nor can he fulfill a trick or treat wish. He has no candy and nothing.
That was hilarious. So so in case for people who haven't seen it, the deal is you've got this. It's not even a Jason. He's more like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre murderer guy.
The general lumbering, mute, ugly slasher villain.
Right.
I guess, but he has the chainsaw and the barn or whatever. So this poor girl happens upon this guy and he's murdering her, and she finds all these other bodies that he's collected, and he's got all this, and then randomly this little claymation adorable alien gets beamed down from a spaceship and says, "Trick or treat."
Yes.
The guy who has just killed this girl and who has this like really disfigured face, he starts just going, I don't have any, like, but he can't speak clearly, but it's like, I don't have any candy, and he's just kind of patting his pockets like, I got nothing, and he's like, trick or treat. He's like, I got nothing. So then he's finally like, oh, screw this alien. He stomps him, and so the alien pours in claymation style, pours into the dead girl and brings her to life, but she's dead, impaled with a spear. So now this dead chick with a spear is like chasing after him with
in a
glowing
naughty
eyes.
Dorothy
It's
costume.
pretty funny in a naughty Dorothy costume. It's pretty damn funny, honestly. Except it's so gross because like then they're just fighting, and so since she's already dead, there's nothing you can do to kill the body, and so they just do all kinds of horrible things to the two bodies. It is pretty funny.
The girl looks a lot like a Deadite from one of the Evil Dead movies when she comes back, and the Jason knockoff is pretty pretty effectively, he's cartoonish, like he's not realistically disfigured, like he looks like you think about Jason in the Friday the 13th movies, he looks like something that could exist almost, whereas like this thing is taken to that parody level. But I don't know, this is one of the ones I enjoyed more of, because it wasn't trying to be anything artsy fartsy,
So if you were doing,
it made me laugh.
If you were doing a 4-part, creep show or a new Amicus, this would be one of the 4 that you would keep.
I would definitely keep this one. This one was, again, it was cute.
Okay, but the next one,
it's really short though, and it kind of has to be. You can't extend that joke.
So it doesn't, like a twisted Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah. It wouldn't work if it was longer. And it's one of the few. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's humorous. It does everything and has the cool, like you said, cool alien spaceship, that UFO that flies out into the night.
It just now occurred to me, actually, that the guys fighting across the street from one another, that could be the frame story. The way that you're talking about it, Tony, you ditch Adrienne Barbeau, and they're the frame story as they move.
Whoa. No Adrienne Barbeau?
I can't ditch Adrienne Barbeau.
All right. Next is The Ransom of Rusty Rex, which is an adaptation of O. Henry's The Ransom of Red Chief, where 2 losers kidnap a kid and finally are so terrorized by him that they are forced to try to give him back.
So this one is probably my favorite in the whole bunch. It has the least to do with Halloween. It's only tangentially about Halloween, but it's actually kind of creepy. Like the demon kid makeup is creepy, and the situation is so macabrely funny that plus John Landis cameo. Like this one works pretty well to me.
So the setup here is that these guys want to kidnap the child of a millionaire or billionaire or whatever, so that they can get money. And so when the guy sends off his child, presumably, into the night to trick or treat, they kidnap the kid and they call John Landis and they're like, hey dude, we got your kid, you need to give us money. And he's like, good luck with that, don't call me again. And they're like, wait, what? And then so they call him again. I know. They're like, they call him again and he's like, no, you got yourselves into this and I'm not going to help you because it's been my problem and now he's yours. And sure enough, it turns out that this is not a kid at all. He's a demon that at some point showed up at John Landis' house and like has held the family prisoner all these years. And now finally he's free of him because he's latched on to them. And sure enough, he will not die. He cannot be killed. He's creepy as hell. It's pretty funny.
Yes, this one's funny. It is a good bit. And so what trend are we noticing? Am I wrong here? It seems to me that the more this film actually plays toward humor, the better it does.
It does better, absolutely.
Also, this one is slightly longer, so it has. It's one where it's as long as it kind of needs to be, I feel like.
Well, I like the relationship between the 2 kidnappers. Like they actually feel kind of lived in and real. Like they seem like actual buddies, to the point where like at the end of it, where you have like quote unquote Rusty, eating the head of one of the kidnappers in the back of the car. Even though it's twisted and funny, it's also kind of sad because this guy's best friend is now Monster Chow. And so this like worked the best to me in terms of actually being kind of creepy. At the same time, it's legitimately really funny, and it had the best characters in it. So this one would have been a keeper if we were cutting parts of this movie out. This would definitely wouldn't have been the one I cut.
Mm-hmm. It's a bummer that the actor who played the demon child passed. They have a in memoriam at the end.
Really?
Because
no kidding.
He did such a good job. Yeah, I tend to watch all the credits.
Is he the same actor who plays the demon in the Devil Story too?
I didn't look. I need to look that up.
Because it doesn't say. When I was looking at the cast, he only is credited as being Rex, the Rex, whatever the kid.
I think he's just Rex.
But I don't know. But they don't credit the other demon, the other little person. So I don't know if it's the same person or not.
Oh, good question. We can look at that. Actually, that one's called The Night Billy Raised Hell, right? So the little devil was played by Christoph Zajac-Denek. And this one is Ben Wolf.
Yeah.
So they're two different actors.
Well, good for them though for including little people in this film, even if they are demons.
Absolutely. So and that
and he's been in other horror stuff too. So it was really watching at the end. Oh man, he's done some cool stuff. That was a shame.
That's a shame. There was one more story. Only one more, and that one gives us a totally different tone. And it's from Neil Marshall, who is the guy who did the military werewolf movie that we watched.
Dog
and a lot,
Dog
Soldiers.
Yeah, a lot of
and the Descent, and a lot of episodes of Game of Thrones.
Yes, none of that tone is here. Instead, he's doing a riff on the kind of basically like Halloween 3. Tom Atkins.
Well, it becomes definitely Halloween 3.
Yeah. By the end, yeah. But like Tom Atkins in like that movie and The Fog and Night of the Comet. As the sort of, except for that it's a girl.
Yeah,
that's it. It's a gender flipped Tom Atkins story, and that's okay. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's really just a gag, where just like the earlier one with the girl.
Are you gonna tell our listeners what the setup is?
I guess there's a big mutant pumpkin on the
jack-o'-lantern
eating jack-o'-lantern.
Yep.
Yes. But this is not played straight. This is played goofy.
But it's played stupid. It's not funny, I don't think.
Right.
I thought it was kind of humorous, but it's weird to me. And Neil Marshall's pretty awesome. I love Dog Soldiers. Really talented. It feels like it should be longer because it's got several things going. You've got the pumpkin part and the really hilarious thing where they do all the procedural stuff and all the gags I actually like. So they draw, what's the perpetrator look like? Oh, it's a pumpkin. But the artist is really crappy kind of.
And do you know
who draws this really sketchy looking pumpkin?
And artist, this will blow your mind. Or maybe you already know. The artist is Drew Struzan.
And that's amazing, right? and that's what's humorous about it is he's terrible in the movie. It's basically a crayon drawing. It's awful. And so for him to that's again, like there's a lot of bits, but when it does this in the corner, is trying to put the face back together, but it's been bitten off by this pumpkin. You could just have done the pumpkin part, but then they have the chasing the pumpkin part, and they call her back to do the haha, I hate Halloween, you're a loose cannon.
Right. Come back to this station so I can tell you to get back out there and to clean up this mess.
It feels like either it should have been we're in the world of crazy, all of the tropes are there and you're in that world and almost like Last Action Hero but for horror kind of thing.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
But it's not really long enough to kind of cover all of that, and that's where it's a shame. It just feels like we've got so many things.
I just enjoy seeing a man eating jack-o'-lantern, but I kind of dug this one.
No, I think it does a lot of cool stuff. My thing is you could ditch a chunk of these and expand on this, and I think it would have been stronger. This is one that should be longer because it tries to do so much within a short period of time that it feels more disjointed to me. And maybe there's a longer cut, and they were like, "Hey, we have 10 of these. You got to pick and choose."
I get what you're saying. I really enjoy the creature effects in this, even though they are
awesome.
they're goofy, but they work for me. And I love that they have the John Carpenter kind of ending where they discover there's a whole factory factory farm of mutant pumpkins, with Joe Dante as a mad scientist.
And it's like Clover, which is a take on the Silver Shamrock. 3. Yeah.
I kind of dug this one. I guess what you're saying. Look, what I don't understand why the people who produced this movie, they have enough material here for 2 movies.
Yeah,
they could have done
3 even.
They could have done Tales of Halloween, and then like the next year released the sequel and had more Tales of Halloween, and made these a little bit longer. And I think, and honestly, actually, they did a semi-sequel, which is a Christmas anthology, a Christmas horror anthology, which I think is a lot better than this one. And the stories they don't have as many stories, and subsequently the stories are a little longer.
Is that the one with the Krampus?
There is a Krampus in that one.
Is it the one where he fights Santa Claus? Is that, or am I getting that mixed up?
That is a thing that happens in that.
Oh yeah. Oh, and Shatner's the host, right?
Shatner is the host.
Yeah, so, that one also felt uneven to me, but that's my own thing.
All anthologies to me are a little bit uneven by their very nature, but I think it's a little bit better than this one.
But like, now it makes sense in the fact that they're done by the same people. Like it all congeals a little bit more. But yeah, I agree. I think giving certain again, like we've said, I think that some of them are exactly the length they should be. This one I could have seen being a little bit longer because it just tries to introduce so much that it feels.
I wouldn't want it to be longer. I would just want it to have less stories.
No, I meant this last. Bad
the last story. No, No, I didn't care for it at all. The man-eating jack-o'-lantern. I thought it was stupid. They didn't give it a reason. Like if it was gonna be longer, they would have to introduce why did this happen? Like why did they?
I don't think that
man-eating jack-o'-lantern is the reason. You don't.
They do have a reason because they're mutated. Because Clover is making them the same way. I mean, it's a take on the mask, right? Like why it's a cult.
But they mask it. No, but the mask they do at least a little bit say, oh hey, it's this ancient thing that.
No. You know, not the. You're talking. Well, wait. Are you talking? I'm sorry.
I was talking about Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking
Tony's
about
talking about Halloween 3.
See, I don't remember Halloween 3, so I don't remember what the deal is with Clover. But I was thinking about
Dan O'Hurley is an Irish jerkwad who has a big company that he is using to deliver children to Satan.
Right. Yeah. I remember now.
And the whole end of this one is, haha, we've made all these mutants.
Yes.
It's really like this story is like the first act of a longer movie. Basically,
right?
Yeah,
or something like that.
I mean, I guess if it, and perhaps he kind of made it as this is the trailer to a world where we have analogs to all this. So Clover is Silver Shamrock, et cetera, and that's possible.
Yeah.
But there's so much that it feels like it doesn't all fit together. But the parts that work really well. The attacking jack-o'-lantern when it's crawling around with its cool like tentacle vines, all of that's hilarious and awesome. The
only thing that I thought was hilarious is when it's hiding amongst other jack-o'-lanterns. That
was really good. That's really, I enjoy it. It tries to do so much, and I don't know. Again,
I never know. Tell me how I'm supposed to feel. That's really what I want from everybody. Tell me how I'm supposed to feel when a gag comes along and I recognize the gag. A lot of times I feel annoyed, like, God, okay, yes, I get it. And that seems like a terribly unhealthy way to approach humor. In other words, the technician in the police station figures the thing out for her and goes, I guess you need to buy me dinner. I get it. I'm supposed to be going, yeah, we've seen this scene a million times in stories where the genders are flipped, so this is that other thing. But that doesn't make me laugh. And then I go, why are you wasting time with a gag that I recognize but doesn't make me laugh? Am I just overthinking things here? In other words...
Yes.
There you go.
If you don't think something is funny, that's okay. The joke is there for someone who does think it's funny.
The question is, does anybody think it's funny?
And that's a good question, but humor is so subjective.
Yeah.
And also, it could be how you feel at the time and whether or not you're okay with the joke being the joke is the joke.
Yeah.
The whole joke is it's a very meta. Remember, we're in this world.
Yeah.
And that I think that either works for you or doesn't.
There's kind of no more to it. That's the whole joke.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. And Drew, you're exactly right. Okay, so that brings us to the end. That brings us to the end of 10 stories, which feels a lot longer than it is, which is, again, one of the
This
big
episode
drawbacks.
is probably longer than the actual movie.
I think we're bordering on close.
Yeah. So we should get our final thoughts, and then I want to come around for our endorsements. So we started with you, Tony, right? So or was it Drew?
No,
I believe it was Tony, Drew, Julia, and I'll go.
Nope.
Tony.
Drew first.
It was Drew. Oh well, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. We'll start with Drew. Mr. Drew, why did you make us watch this movie? No, I'm sorry.
I thought that we could have a very intense bonding experience over the heated opinions about this movie. Sure.
Yeah.
No, I had Halloween in the title, and I will go. I will go back to that email chain and point out to you that the movie I was pushing for was Night of the Demon. Like we will do that movie at some point.
I agree.
Or I will send man-eating pumpkins to eat you. But to me, that is a much better.
You can
Halloween,
too,
Halloween themed. Well, I do own October. Ask anybody.
Yeah, the Halloween man can make it happen for sure.
If anyone were to make good on that threat, I would say Drew is the most likely to make good on that.
Yep.
I actually did really, no, all kidding aside though, I did actually really enjoy this conversation, and I think it really zeroed in on, I think if you were to cut some of the dead weight, if there was like a much more ruthless editor working on this movie that would just cut some of the dead weight out of this movie, I think you would actually have something here. Because like now that we've talked about it, the segments of this movie that I enjoyed, I actually really enjoyed. It's just then they're bogged down by like 3 or 4 other ones that I'm like, eh. So like I actually think as like a seasonal discussion of a Halloween themed horror film, this was fine. This was fun. And I actually kind of take back my earlier statements. I am glad that we watched this because I think it was a fun discussion, and it definitely put me in the mood to watch more Halloween themed movies.
Wonderful.
That being said, this is definitely a lesser Halloween themed horror film, but still worth watching. So there you go. I relented a little bit.
Thank you very much. And I was totally teasing when I said, why'd you make us watch this? We watched this because I put it on the list. But yes. All right. Mr. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to stick with, again, I hope that if somebody goes through and sees this and isn't hating on me. Because as a creator, I just feel weird. I don't enjoy tearing people's stuff apart. Because I don't like it when it's done to me. That the whole there I go, but for grace of God. I don't enjoy that. I was frustrated because some of these the directors and people that I dig made things that were disappointing to me. And that's my own problem, right? I think it's a mixed bag. I think it could have it could have been told in 2 parts and expanded upon here and there, but again, that's me wishing like, oh, if I made this, it would be this way. I don't think I'll be rewatching it a ton of times. There's other anthologies that I would prefer to watch over and over. But that being said, there's a ton of great bits amongst this and some really cool, fun Halloween stuff. So I don't regret watching it. It's doubtful that it would go into my constant rotation. But the darkly humorous parts and some of the gore and, there's tons of good bits, or else I would just put it in the can and that's it. I
just want to respond real quick before I throw to Julia. I really do think that it is a useful exercise for you or me or anybody as we're watching this to go, I think it would be better if this happened or that happened. I think Ghostbusters 2 would be better if that kid was actually Ray's kid. Whatever. I don't think it's unfair.
There is nothing wrong with Ghostbusters 2.
I knew you were treading on dangerous ground there when you started.
Man, you were so getting sent killer pumpkins. Sorry,
Drew,
Julia.
do me a Drew. Send it directly to Jason's office and not to
Julia. Take out the insurance now.
You'll be spared my wrath.
Up the insurance and make sure it covers Killer Pumpkin. I don't know. Maybe that's premeditated. Maybe legally that you can't hear that. So maybe you can say that you muted that. You didn't hear me.
I love the idea. I love the idea that I could call my insurance company and go, "Does my policy cover killer jack-o'-lanterns?" Yeah, that's super funny. I actually want to try that and see what happens.
So I'm just saying, even though you can plausible deniability say that it did not work and that you didn't hear any of this, just throwing it out there.
I'm glad we had this discussion. Julia, it is now you.
Well, I do not have a constant rotation of horror movies, but if I did, this would definitely not be on it for sure. As I said, and as we've been discussing it, I found that there were more things about it that I liked than I remembered, but I definitely did not like most of it. I really think it's mostly because the two reasons that we discussed. One, that I can't stand gory things, and two, that it's just too many stories. Like, I really feel like if they'd done 5 of them, they could have done it much. Like you said, break it into 2, or even just eliminate some of the weaker ones. But as we've been talking about, there are some things that definitely I did think were funny, or I did think were clever. So it was not a complete loss of an evening.
Fantastic. I'll say it's always interesting to choose a film for our Halloween episode. Glad we watched this because it gave me a chance to think about what are the risks that an anthology should be taking. And one thing we learned here is that, many more stories that are shorter just makes you exhausted. It just can't. I really feel like that's one of the major problems, that it can't be overcome. That at the same time that the storytellers are trying to tell a story faster because they have to be more efficient, we, the watcher, are constantly resetting, and in the end, that's not as fun as sort of settling into a 15-minute story in something like Tales from the Crypt or Tales of the Dark Side. But it's an interesting experiment, and we definitely enjoyed some things in it. So, all right. Let's get our endorsements. Just whatever it is that you've been reading or watching or listening to lately. Halloween is upon us, so if that plays into this, I'm totally interested. Drew, what do you have to endorse for us this week?
So first of all, go out and watch Trick or Treat. It's amazing. We did an episode on it years ago, but it's really, really good, and I name dropped it. But I have a lot of Comixology things going right now. So there are 2 new Halloween. There's one regular series Halloween Man issue that came out earlier this month. There's an issue of Halloween Man Special that just came out last week. This coming Wednesday, there is another new issue of the Halloween Man ongoing. And the entire back issues, like every back issue that is on Comixology, all of them are way marked down, and that's like everything from the Halloween Man universe, like all the different Halloween Man titles. Some of them are as low as 50 cents. So if you're like, oh, I've been listening to this podcast for a long time, I'm kind of curious about Drew's comic, but I don't have a lot of money to spare, now is your time to go crazy, because from now till Halloween, it's all super cheap. So just check out the new stuff, check out the old stuff, read Halloween Man on Comixology, write Comixology, tell them that you love it, in that order. Non self-serving thing. Actually, I have a non-horror endorsement, although I think it's one that a lot of people probably already watched. I really, really, really loved the first episode of Watchmen. I was surprised at how much I liked that, because I was kind of keyed up to hate on it, because I kind of think the idea of doing a sequel to Watchmen is a little silly, because it's a pretty self-contained story. And I especially think it's strange to do a sequel to a comic book in a completely different medium, which is television. But goddamn, that first episode is so good and, so thought-provoking, great actors, great use of the mythology, and just will give you something to discuss with your friends and family for the entire week. So go out and watch The Watchmen.
Thank you very much. All right, Tony, what do you have for us?
Okay, I got several things. Please bear with me. I know this is on demand. You can rent it on Netflix. Memory: The Origins of Alien. Hopefully, eventually, we can talk to some of the people who made it, or produced it. It is a great, cool documentary centering around, in part, the chestburster scene in Alien, and expands outside of that. Talks. There's interviews with O'Bannon and his wife, and there's stuff with Giger, and it's a really great documentary. We still need to do Alien, and I don't know why we haven't. That is fantastic. The Dolomite Is My Name biopic, amazing. One of the most universally loved movies at Fantastic Fest, for good reason. Also, if you're a creator and you don't come out the other side of this movie looking at how Rudy Ray Moore decided to just go do things, it was so amazing. Just like, oh man, I need to create stuff. Like, why am I not out there doing stuff? It's great, and a true return to form for Eddie Murphy. The whole cast is great.
And Keegan-Michael Key, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Like, I can't say enough good things. Other people, usually there's this kind of ripple effect where something's really popular at a film festival and you get a bunch of people going, whatever, it wasn't that good. Everybody's overhyping. I didn't see that at Fantastic Fest. Everybody genuinely went, holy crap, that was amazing. So, also on sale, if you have a Nintendo Switch, there's a puzzle game called Friday the 13th Killer Puzzle, where you are Jason and you must kill different people, except maybe not cats. And it's a really fun puzzle game, but it's on sale right now until right after Halloween. So for $7 you can play just a ton of levels. There's some great fan service nods. It kind of has in a way an almost South Park kind of look to it, for lack of when you see the visuals, you'll understand what I mean. And you can set the gore to be R-rated or PG, which I think is kind of cool. But there's a lot of great Jason bits in it. Friday the 13th, The Killer Puzzle. And finally, because we did the retrospective, the Criterion Godzilla set, which comes in a giant book, like a kind of a thinner coffee table book, but it's the size of a coffee table book with tons of art, is amazing. I've only watched a couple of the movies, but they are beautiful. I picked Megalon, even though that one's a crazy sillier one, because I hadn't seen it subtitled in a really long time. Criterion outdid themselves. So as far as I can tell, I haven't been through every disc, but holy moly, if you can afford it or you can pick it up when they do their half off sale, it is something else. But
thank you very, very much.
I know, sorry to monopolize, but there's a ton of cool stuff out right now.
No, that's totally fine. I'm glad. And my endorsement actually is really, I don't know. It's just the stuff that I've been watching. There's a horror movie that I came across that I've been thinking about watching for many years. And lately, I've really been getting into Euro horror after being gone from it for a while. And I watched The Bloody Pit of Horror, which stars McKee Hargitay, or Hargitay. I'm never really sure how to say that last name. as a rich dude who owns a castle. So a bunch of models and photographers break into a castle because they want to do a groovy model shoot there. And this is Italy in the in 1969, and McKee Hargitay is there to believe that he's a reincarnated medieval torturer and he's going to torture them. It is wonderful. There's a shot that I grabbed and put on my Twitter feed of this woman who stumbles into his weird giant spider room contraction where she is up in a big spider web and a mechanical spider is approaching her. That is truly strange, and I don't know. So Bloody Pit of Horror. You can find it everywhere because the film is in the public domain. But it makes me really want to do a retrospective of grungy Euro horror, which we haven't hit on in like a year and a half.
Favorite.
Yes. Yes.
By the way,
with appropriate response.
Speaking of Julia, you've skipped me for the endorsements.
Oh my gosh, Julia, I am so sorry.
That's okay.
Is this the trick part of Trick or Treat?
Pumpkin insurance. I'm telling you,
you're gonna just keep skipping over people because I'm starting to think between me and Julia that it's deliberate.
It's
pumpkin.
It's because he has a cold. It's because he has a cold and he's on cold meds, and so it's making me
So
I just think he wants to see if I actually can summon Killer Pumpkin, so he's trying to incur my wrath.
No, not at all.
All right, Julia, lay it on.
So I have not had a lot of time to be watching things because we went last weekend and took our kiddos to Disney World, and so I want to endorse the new Star Wars Land at Disney World because it is awesome. And also Avatar, Pandora, the flight. What's it called? The flight of the Avatar. What's it called, Jason?
I actually cannot remember what the
Avatar. The Avatar ride is just incredible.
It's just meaning no disrespect, but it's Soarin' with Avatar, really.
Right, but that's not the point. The actual attraction is great, but it's the world. The queue is actually, it's kind of like if anybody's been to Harry Potter at Universal, it's the same idea where the queue is you're in the world of Avatar. So it's really, really cool. And then we did the Skyliner gondola, which was a little scary because as a claustrophobic person, having heard that people were trapped for a couple of hours, like a week after it opened, I was a little nervous, but they fixed all that, I guess, whatever it was. And it was great. I loved it. It was very fast and beautiful and all that. So anybody who's thinking about going to Disney World, do it now because weather's nice in Florida as long as there's no tropical storm. We did get a little drenched, but it was nice and cool. And very fun. So that's my endorsement.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And I agree, by the way, the Skyliner was really, really cool. And it was so fast. I loved that. Anything with gondolas. I'm actually easily sold on gondolas.
That needs to be a t-shirt.
Yeah. I like anything with gondolas.
Including Venice. It can be flying gondolas or boat gondolas.
Well, I was realizing that there are actually things like that if they show up in a movie, like there's a shorthand that I will like enjoy this movie. Like if the movie opens with a long crane shot that kind of lowers over a small town and shows a lot of leaves, I will probably enjoy that. If you have gondolas, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Wait till those leaves turn into pumpkin leaves. You're singing a different tune, Henderson.
Yes, indeed. So I appreciate everybody being on and taking the time to discuss this film. As you can see from the website, first of all, join us on the page. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if we were completely unfair to this or which ones you would have kept and which ones you would have gotten rid of. And get this, we will be back super soon with our, probably, in fact, starting next week, with our new Stephen King retrospective, which is going to be really great. So I can't wait. I think which one comes first? I'm trying to remember now.
The Shining.
It's The Shining,
not the Kubrick version, the TV version.
Yeah, we're gonna hit a lot of like second level Stephen King stuff, which I think is a great opportunity to discuss what works in King and what doesn't and what we love.
Ooh.
So we're going to do the Shining miniseries and then Dr. Sleep and then some other awesome stuff.
If we continue through December, we can just make it the King of Kings retrospective.
Clever.
Even though none of these will probably make that. Although I've heard really good things about Dr. Sleep. Though.
Dr. Sleep is going to be early on. We're going to do Dr. Sleep on the 10th because it'll come out the Friday before that. Julia and I have already bought our tickets. We are ready for Dr. Sleep.
And by bought, he means reserved because we have our monthly what's it called?
Yeah.
The AMC AMC stubs, AMC what's it called?
It's called the A-list.
A-list, yeah.
We just give money. We just give money to AMC Theater
every month, and then we go to movies. Hopefully,
I got on the Draft House version of that.
Did you really? So that's cool.
Nice. Also, there should be some very interesting Rooster Teeth Easter eggs. There's a Ruby poster in the trailer.
Cool.
But there should hopefully there'll be more. All I know about is the Ruby poster. So hopefully, but now that we're in the mix for Warner Brothers,
that's great.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's kind of cool, actually. Seeing what show I work on, have a poster in a Stephen King movie. That's kind of
cool. That's fantastic.
Good job.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you.
Have a happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween.
Avoid
killer pumpkins.
Yes.
Remember, Drew, when we get offline, I'll send you Jason's work office address.
Yes.
Consider it done.
Yes.
All right. Night, everybody.
Right. Oh,
Night.
by the way,
Night.
I just want to mention this real quick. Monster Movie Happy Hour just launched, and I love what those guys are doing. They just did the Love Witch, so you should check it out.
Oh, absolutely. Which we should do the Love Witch, but now maybe if we're copying, maybe we postpone that for a while. But yes, definitely they rock, and you should check that out.
All right. Adios, everybody. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.